Hello and welcome to Widnes Rugby Chat episode 33. In this week's episode, I'll run through the members' evening at the Halton Stadium this week, providing some great insight into what's going on behind the scenes at the club. There'll be some talk on central funding and how that's impacting the Vikings this year. I'll run through the latest player recruitment news and how the squad's looking. We'll discuss some dual registration options for the club, and then we'll round off with a special request I've heard back from Halton Council, which you'll hopefully be interested in at the end of the show. Thanks as always to sponsors of the podcast, Musical All Sorts, PD Law Solicitors, Deals the Jewellers and Arnold Gorse Financial Management. It is actually a year, just over a year since the very first episode of Widnes Rugby Chat, so thanks everyone for listening during that time. A lot easier now doing the audio-only podcast than the videos, but I might make a few video appearances from time to time. In the coming weeks particularly. Of course, if you want to come on or you want to see anyone particular on the show, please do make some suggestions, tweet me, send me a DM or whatever, get me on the forum, and I'll sort that out. A lot's happened in that year. We've got rid of James Rule, we nearly lost the club, we went to Wembley, and we've got Tim Sheens. So, pretty eventful 2019, it has to be said. So Monday night, which was the 4th of November, there was a members' night hosted by the club. Whistle volunteers were there to help it smooth running as well. There was an attendance of around about 175 fans in the Bridge Suite, hosted by Dave Rolt, and he was joined by head coach Tim Sheens, CEO Phil Finney, players Jack Owens and Danny Craven. It was good to see Chairman Chris Price amongst the crowd, as well as Rod Steele, who is one of the directors. I'm looking forward to hopefully catching up with Rod in Carcassonne next weekend for the French Magic Weekend. If you've got me on Twitter, I did tweet some updates throughout the night, so if you want to dig through my Twitter at JDG Sport, you'll see a few more notes. I'm definitely going to mention everything that I mentioned on there, plus a few extras in the podcast. The first note was about season tickets, so it was the early bird deadline at the weekend, Saturday, I think. And Widnes have sold more than 1,800 season tickets so far in the 4 weeks that they've been available, which is well in excess of expectations. I think Phil Finney quoted around 1,000. They were expecting around 1,000 at this point. This time last year, only 1,560 had been sold. So there's an increase of what's that, maybe 20% or so. A 20% increase already. Obviously, there's plenty of people who've probably not bought already. I mean, I've not bought mine yet, actually, so there's plenty of people out there who are yet to buy, so should break through that 2,000 barrier very soon, and of course gives the club a healthy base to work from, especially when it comes to budgeting with the RFL especially. There was a question about the 2020 kit. There's going to be a kit launch on November the 20th, which is a Wednesday. There's an exclusive event that's going to be held on November the 19th, which will be a first look at the new kit for members. The details of that are going to be revealed on the club website imminently. They were 2 points I've highlighted there as ones you might be interested in before we get into the nitty-gritty of the discussions. Phil Finney was first on stage, and his first port of call was the coaching situation. He talked about Kieran Purtill, and how that all came about. Basically, Purtill got him in a room and they started talking about the Chappellow brothers' new contracts, and then he just, out of the blue, said that he was leaving to go to Hull, which was an interesting one. The question was asked, was Purtill in breach of his contract? Phil Finney said no, he wasn't. He could give his notice and work a notice period as per a normal employment contract that you and I may enter into. Although Phil Finney did say he wasn't too impressed with the Hull chief executive's way of going about things, and he did actually make that point to the Hull CEO. I think it's James Clark, the Hull CEO. So no compensation received for Widnes for that move, but obviously good from Finney's point of view that he made his feelings known about the way the business was conducted. Finney then followed that up with how the Tim Sheens move came about. He said that he basically, after exiting the room with Purtill, he basically got in his car and went for a drive. He didn't know where he was going to, and within about 5 minutes he had an agent ringing him and saying, I believe you're looking for a new head coach, and Phil Finney was thinking, well, how on earth do you know what's going on? I've only known for 5 minutes, which obviously shows that there was some background talks going in. I think the agent, who was later revealed to be Iestyn Harris, had been for a meeting at Hull, and it was them that had told him that Pirtle was going to Hull, which was before Pirtle had even told Widnes. So that maybe explains some of the not impressed nature of Hull's business in that one. Anyway, Finney was thinking about the names available coach-wise, and he was thinking, I'm going to be crucified by our fans here when thinking of names. I'm sure a few of you out there can maybe think of some names, certainly some of the ones that were speculated about. And it was actually Iestyn Harris who said, have you thought about Tim Sheens? To which Phil Finney replied, are you taking the piss? Which I guess is many people's reaction when you probably heard of Tim Sheens. Certainly Danny Craven and Jack Owens were a bit like, are you joking, when people told them. But it turns out Sheens called Finney the same day, explained he understood the situation the club was in. The early part of his career involved rebuilding Penrith, from the ground up almost, and that sort of assured Phil Finney straight away. He was a little bit worried about whether Sheens had the energy and enthusiasm for the job, but as soon as he spoke to Sheens, he saw his unbelievable passion for rugby league and that he understood the club's expectations, and that assured him that he was ready for the job. I mean, I must admit, you look at Tim Sheens and you do sort of... He doesn't look like the most energetic and enthusiastic person when he stood there, but as soon as he starts talking about rugby league, he turns into a completely different character. So that's a massive positive. Finney then told the board he was going to meet Sheens, and the board actually thought he'd lost the plot, he said, which I'm sure many of us would probably have agreed with. He told a funny anecdote about they were trying to have a covert meeting with Sheens at the Village Hotel in Wiston, and just so happened to bump into the whole St Helens team. Saints were preparing for their game against Wigan. They ended up diverting Sheens to the stadium instead to keep the talks under wraps. There wasn't so much a negotiation going on, more of just a meet-up to get everyone on the same page. And of course, the deal was done, and Sheens became the new head coach of Widnes Vikings for 2020. Massive coup for the club, brilliant pick-up. Certainly, Sheens was great with the fans and with the crowd last night. It seemed very comfortable. He was invited on the stage to have a bit of a chat with Dave Rolt, and the first point he made was about the World Club Challenge victory for Widnes, which was basically 30 years ago, almost to the day that Sheens took over. Sheens was leading Canberra in the defeat to Widnes. He joked about the first picture he saw at the club was, of course, of the Widnes team. If you've been in the club, there's a massive mural of the victorious Widnes team all wearing Canberra shirts, celebrating after the World Club Challenge win. An interesting one, actually, probably for fans of the game. Sheens said he watched the game back for the first time ever a few weeks ago after taking the job. He'd never watched the 1989 World Club Challenge until he took the Widnes job. Sheens talked about why he took the job. He was ready to go back to Australia in November because his visa was running out. He had a few clubs were looking at bringing him in sort of a director or administrative type roles. Iestyn Harris, his agent, basically mentioned the opportunity at Widnes to him. Sheens joked that his wife actually made him take the job at Widnes because she wants to live in the UK rather than Australia. Sheens also said that he's not far off a British passport. I think he's been here for 4 years with Salford and Hull KR. I think a 5-year residency qualifies you for a British passport, which of course becomes useful if you want to live obviously in the UK, but well, maybe not anymore, but it was at one point useful to live in Europe as well. Sheens revealed a few little pointers and anecdotes which I thought was quite interesting. He revealed that Hull KR's budget in the Championship back in 2017, which is when he was coach there, was 4 times the budget that Widnes will have in 2020. Hull KR secured promotion back to Super League under Sheens, ironically by beating Widnes. Sheens says the challenge of replicating that success, the supporter base, and the opportunity to coach, he wasn't ready to stop coaching and go into administrative roles, were the reasons behind taking the job. He basically wants to replicate the success he had at Hull KR and get Widnes back to Super League. His first aim, he says, is getting the club into the top 5. There was a bit of discussion about part-time. Sheens basically said that it won't make a massive deal of difference. Sheens is full-time. The players, of course, part-time. He says they'll be part-time in hours but professional in attitude, and the players that he spoke to are looking forward to the challenge. He spoke with Logan Tompkins, and they're well up for it. Sheens was pivotal in getting the deal done for Logan Tompkins. Happened relatively quickly. I think Phil Finney revealed he had not spoken to Logan Tompkins before he even signed. So that just shows how pivotal Tim Sheens was in getting Logan Tompkins in. There wasn't a great deal of chat about recruitment. I'll go into that a bit later on. Sheens did say that coaches are never happy with recruitment, or recruitment is always ongoing. There was no real hints of any. Well, in fact, there's no other signings lined up, or there's no signings that have been made that haven't been announced. So I'll go on to that in a bit later on. There's a bit of talk about budget around that in the later on around dual registration as well. Sheens then went on to talk about the style of rugby he wanted to play. I won't go into massive amounts of detail because I think most coaches generally tend to say the same at the start. He says that he'll try and play an open style of rugby. He likes his teams to throw the ball around, move the ball quick, and try to play an entertaining brand. Widnes won't be the biggest pack, but will be mobile. And Sheen says he's only concentrating on what Widnes are doing and nobody else. He said that he was impressed by a couple of the kids in the Widnes Academy side that beat a City of Hull Academy team last season. Of course, Sheens was at Hull KR and would have been at a City of Hull Academy game to look at players available to him. And he said there will be an open training session for fans to attend at some point. Sheens has no plans to recruit an assistant coach. There was also a bit of a joke. He doesn't plan to climb the ladder to the gantry on match day. He plans to sit in the stand or be on the sideline. He'll attend reserves and academy games when he can. A few people have asked about the academy coach, and I know Grant Gore has left the club. Ryan O'Brien is leading up the academy, and there's 3 or 4 volunteer coaches, I believe, that are helping manage the academy and scholarship now. So it doesn't sound like there'll be a great deal more movement in terms of backroom staff. Sheen says he sees no reason why Widnes shouldn't aim high. I've said it before. He says the first aim is making the top 5. He talked about Featherstone last season. If you make the top 5, anything can happen. And so, yeah, looking ahead to pre-season as well, he hinted he wants to play 3 pre-season friendlies, wants to maybe play a couple at the Halton Stadium. That will incorporate reserve players, academy players and trialists. There seems to be a very strong hint that one of the friendlies will be away at Wigan, which will be for Liam Farrell's testimonial. Farrell, of course, made his senior debut for Widnes on loan many years ago. I think he played 6 or 7 games for Widnes, was, if I remember rightly, was pretty much man of the match in every single game he played, and then went back to Wigan and almost walked straight back into the Wigan team. He's getting a testimonial, so I presume that will be at the DW Stadium. In between Finney and Sheens being on the stage, Danny Craven and Jack Owens had a little bit of a chat with Dave Rolt. Danny Craven said he stayed loyal to Widnes, wants to get the club back in Super League. He couldn't imagine playing for another club. Says Widnes gave him the opportunity to fulfil his dreams as a kid. He mentioned about how he's now got a family of his own. He's got 2 kids, and one of his kids wants to play for Widnes. So a nice little story of loyalty for him. And Jack Owens said similar. He said as soon as the club said they were going part-time, he told his agent not to bother looking for full-time offers as he wanted to stay at Widnes regardless. Owen said he was done with rugby after his year at Leigh, which was 2018. Had a few issues getting his money off Derek Beaumont. He was almost ready to wave goodbye to rugby, but of course made the return to Widnes. He's now keen to look at his life outside rugby and his career after rugby, which obviously part-time helps with. He also wants to help Widnes get back to Super League as well. So yeah, some great stuff there from the 3 from the playing side, and then of course Phil Finney as well. Moving on to central funding, a few people have asked me about this, and I did try and find out a little bit of information on what's going on. Phil Finney confirmed that Widnes will receive the maximum central funding available to them. The RFL set out a number of return on investment goals relating to attendances, governance, data, which is things like your database, your social media followings, how many people are on the R League app, stuff like that, and finance. There was an audit by the RFL in recent weeks, and Widnes have just had confirmation that they will receive the full central funding available to them. So I believe that's in the region of around £72,500 for that area specifically. There's a further £115,000 which every Championship club gets. And then on top of that, a further £60,000, which is based on league position. So the central funding for league position goes up by £15,000 depending on which position in the league you finish. So Widnes finishing in 10th, 10th or 11th, whatever, it gets them £60,000 central funding. Of course, if you go up to the team Toulouse in second place, it's a lot higher. So in total, that central funding's around about $250,000. That all goes into the pot for Widnes' turnover. Of course, the salary cap. I mean, I don't anticipate anyone in Championship to be spending the full salary cap next season, but the salary cap is impacted by your own revenue, so you can only spend 50% of what you turn over. So if you only turn over 400 grand, you can only spend 200 grand on the salary cap. So just gives you a little bit of an idea of the restrictions that Widnes do have in place revenue-wise. There was an interesting point, and a few people have asked me about this on Twitter as well. There was an interesting point made that there was 8 players who had full-time contracts for 2020 who were taking up more than 50% of the club's budget at one point, which, of course, impacted on recruitment. Now, I'm just plucking these figures out of the air. Let's just say the budget is $500,000. That means that those 8 players potentially were taking up, like I say, I'm plucking these figures out there, $250,000. And of course, until Widnes knew they could move them on, they couldn't obviously allocate that spare budget. So the likes of Anthony Gelling, of course, included in that. Phil Finney said that on May the 1st, they made every player aware of the situation, which then meant even the players on contract were free to talk to other clubs. Of course, Gelling and Keenan Brand got sorted fairly quickly at Warrington. All the academy players have taken pay cuts to remain at the club as well. There are some players that have obviously renegotiated the deals and taken pay cuts to stay. Of course, I think a pay cut sounds. I mean, obviously, taking any sort of pay cut is, fair play, but it's not like a huge difference, I don't think, in terms of what they were on their full-time deal to going part-time anyway. There was 2 players that the club still haven't announced what's happening, Owen Farnworth and Liam Walsh. Both will be staying at the club, I am told. There's a bit of uncertainty about Liam Walsh. I've not really got to the bottom of why, but Owen Farnworth will be part of the Widnes squad for next season, which is a boost. I think that takes numbers up to 20. We'll run through the squad very shortly as well. Tim Sheens said that they're not too far off the salary cap budget. There might be room for a couple of signings, but they're trying to keep the space for dual reg and possible loan signings, which of course makes sense. Sheens did mention Featherstone's. Featherstone used a number of players from Leeds, for instance, last season, and said that may be useful as a way for Widnes to get a bit more out of the budget than if they were to sign the players themselves. He also revealed an interesting story about Hull KR. Hull KR still had players on 6-figure salaries when they were playing in the Championship back in 2017. So moving on then, let's run through the squad that's being announced. There's no more announcements apparently to come, or certainly there's no pending announcements, which means the squad is as follows. You've got Jack Owens is the fullback. Winger options are Owen Buckley, Jaden Hatton and Jack Johnson. Centre options, Jake Spedding, Dion Cross and Lloyd Roby. Standoff, Danny Craven. Scrum half, Joe Lyons. At prop, there's Shay Chapelau, Ted Chapelau and Pat Moran. Logan Tompkins in at hooker. Shane Grady, Liam Cooper, McGrath Luluai and Sam Wilde in the back row. And then Kenny Baker as a specialist loose forward. Obviously, based on last night, you can add Owen Farnworth and Liam Walsh to that list. Farnworth certainly be a very good option in the front row. I'm not sure what's happening with Walsh, but I'm sure that'll become clear soon. That leaves 4 players that did play first team last season that haven't being announced. Jacob Dugdale, Joe Edge and Sam Freeman. All three of those I do expect to see in Widnes colours next season. I don't know whether there's a little bit of crossover because they were on academy contracts and maybe that's why they've not been announced. Maybe they're staying on academy contracts. I'm not too sure about that, but I'm fairly confident all three of those will be in and around next season. An interesting one with Dugdale, I think Purtill's very close to his family, so whether Dugdale will move on, I'm not sure, but certainly confident them three will be there next season. And then Josh Ganson is the fourth on that list. Ganson seems to be flirting with the idea of refereeing. There was a picture of him refereeing, and he said he's quite interested in pursuing a career in that. I'm not sure there'll be too many fans overly bothered that Ganson's not coming back next season. It doesn't look like that's what's happening anyway. So that means a couple of player exits have been confirmed since the last show. Brad Walker is leaving Widnes to take up a full-time deal elsewhere. There's been a lot of speculation linking him to Wakefield, but Wigan would appear to be the destination for him, but we'll see what happens with that in the next few weeks. Ryan Ince, who left after being dropped for Wembley, has signed for Lee. And another interesting player movement, Lloyd White, who left Widnes after relegation from Super League, he has signed for Toulouse, so we'll be playing against Widnes at the Halton Stadium in the Championship next season. So that squad then, there's 20 in that squad. You are allowed 5 loan or dual reg players to play, so that would take you up to a nice number of 25. So I've had a look at a couple of options. I know there's been a bit of speculation about Toronto being the dual reg partners. I would say that would seem very unlikely to happen. I mean, to be honest, I'm not sure whether Toronto will have the spare players to make it worthwhile, but certainly I don't think they're probably the best option for Widnes anyway. I did make a note of a few players you could maybe get from Toronto. Tom Alberson, potentially, with Sonny Bill, of course, going there now. Ryan Briley, who's out of favour but still on contract. Adam Higson and Greg Worthington are another couple who Toronto have been offering around, so if they keep those, they may be available for loan or dual reg. But surely the best option, in my opinion, for Widnes is to dual reg with Warrington. Danny Walker, of course, there. He'd be a great foil for Logan Tompkins. They've got Keenan Brand, of course, who's familiar to everyone at Widnes. Matty Ashton, who was the Championship Young Player of the Year, he's at Warrington, of course, next season. They've also signed Sammy Kabula from Wigan, who's played plenty of Championship for Swinton. Josh Thewlis played a few games last season. And then Lewis Johnson, who did, of course, play very briefly for Widnes on loan against Rochdale. And certainly a few options there. Another option that I've put down that's a bit of a left field option maybe is Wigan, with the friendly being lined up against Wigan for Liam Farrell's testimonial. Maybe there's a bit of opening of a door of a relationship between the two clubs, which did get maybe damaged slightly by the events of a couple of years ago when Wigan, of course, postponed the game on the day or whatever it was, and it ended up getting played at Widnes in the James Rule era. So maybe there's been some bridges rebuilt there. Wigan have obviously got plenty of youngsters who you could use. Harry Smith, who of course is a Widnes lad. Jake Shorrocks, he's got a few first grade games under his belt now, getting into his mid-20s, but still not breaking into that Wigan team. They've got Jack Wells. Tom Davis, Super League Grand Final winner. He's struggling to get a game. I'd imagine he'll be out on loan somewhere, but I mean, he could be available for dual reg. Liam Byrne, Ethan Havard, 2 props there who may be available. Chris Hankinson, the former Swinton centre, he might be a player who could get some game time elsewhere. Josh Wood's another youngster as well. I think for me, Wood's too similar to Danny Craven for him to end up at Widnes. So we'll see how that goes in terms of dual reg announcements and any other player announcements in the coming weeks. To sign off on this episode of the podcast, I wanted to make you aware, you may have seen it on my Twitter, I have been pushing Halton Borough Council about the whole why is there no welcome to Widnes, the home of Widnes Vikings signs around the town. I don't live in Warrington, but I work in Warrington, and obviously when you go to Warrington, you get the home of the Warrington Wolves, and given that the rugby is generally what put Widnes on the map, you'd like to think they should have it on the signs there. So I have been pushing the council for some time about this, and I did tweet them a little bit last week, and I said I was quite happy to start a crowdfunding campaign to make this possible. I have spoken to someone from the council now. Someone from the council did ring me earlier this week, and I believe the wheels are in motion for some signs to be put in place on the Widnes side of Halton. Of course, there's 9 signs, I believe, in Widnes. It's been moved upstairs, shall we say, to the powers that be to decide. A cost of around £8,000, I'm led to believe, to create the signs. That's now being passed up to the powers that be for approval at Halton Borough Council. So fingers crossed, we may see some movement there. It'd be great to see that on the sides, especially if it mentions the... I just think you'd have "Welcome to Widnes, home of the Widnes Vikings, World Champions at 89. I think that would be a brilliant addition, a real nod to what puts Widnes on the map, let's be honest. So yeah, if I hear anything more, I'll keep you posted. I'm hoping I don't have to go crowdfunding for it. I'm hoping that the council will do it and will cover it, but we'll see. And I'm sure we'll manage. I'm sure we'd be able to get the crowdfunding put together for that, because it would be great to see. I haven't figured out where the 9 signs are, by the way, so that might be a nice little game for some of you Widnes folk listening to this. You can maybe plot on the map where the 9 "Welcome to Widnes" signs are in the town. So yeah, a bit of positive news to finish on there. Thanks for this bumper edition of Widnes Rugby Chat. Thanks to sponsors Musical All Sorts, PD Law Solicitors, Deals the Jewellers and Arnold Gorse Financial Management. I'll be back very soon for another episode of the Widnes Rugby Chat podcast.